letting go isn't losing. It's liberation. Letting go. Sounds simple, right? But the truth is, it often feels like tearing off a piece of yourself, a relationship, a version of you, an outcome you once believed had to happen. We hold on because it feels safer, but in doing so, we carry weight that was never meant to be ours. Here's the shift. What if letting go isn't giving up? What if it's winning your peace back? This isn't about apathy. This is about clarity. And in this video, we're diving deep into Stoic wisdom and modern psychology to help you release the people, patterns, and thoughts that are silently draining your spirit. Let me ask you one question. What's weighing on you right now? And what if you could finally let it go today? Let's begin. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean walking away cold. And it definitely doesn't mean pretending you're not hurting. Letting go is a form of emotional wisdom. It's the decision to stop carrying what's breaking you and start protecting what's sacred within you, your peace of mind. Most people think they have only two options: hold on and suffer, or let go and feel nothing. But there's a third path, a stronger path. That's where Stoicism meets modern psychology, creating a bridge between ancient detachment and today's emotional clarity. In this episode, we'll explore how to detach without shutting down emotionally. Step back with intention, not guilt. Protect your mental space without becoming bitter. And most importantly, how to let go without losing yourself. This isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming clear. It's about reclaiming your focus, your energy, and your inner calm. So, if you've been feeling weighed down by someone, something, or even an old version of yourself, this journey is for you. Let's begin the art of letting go together. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the modern world. People think it means giving up, turning cold, cutting off emotions like a machine. But true detachment has nothing to do with apathy. Detachment is not the absence of care, it is the presence of inner calm. In the middle of outer chaos, think about that. The ability to remain centered, even when everything around you is designed to pull you off balance. It's not that you feel less, you actually feel everything. But you're no longer held hostage by those feelings. This is the core of Stoic detachment. You don't suppress. You don't run. You observe. You understand. And then you choose your response with intention. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't advocating indifference. He was teaching emotional clarity. Emotional clarity means this: not every message in your emotional inbox deserves a reply. Not every glance, every tone, every storm inside someone else needs to be downloaded into your system. This isn't coldness. It's wisdom. Most people live in constant reaction mode. A message comes in, they react. Someone disrespects them, they explode. A wave of sadness hits, they drown. But detachment is learning to pause, to see the emotional wave coming, and instead of letting it crash into you, you simply let it pass. It's like water flowing around rocks, effortless, still moving, never rigid. Water doesn't fight the obstacle. It adapts. It flows. And yet, it never loses its nature. That's real detachment. In modern terms, we might call it mental minimalism. Because just like we declutter our homes to create space and peace, we must declutter our emotional lives. Ask yourself, how many unnecessary thoughts are you holding on to right now? How many arguments, rejections, memories are still taking up space in your head like expired files? Every day, your mind receives a flood of emotional stimuli. But not everything needs to stay. You can choose what deserves your energy, what deserves a response, what deserves peace, and what deserves silence. Detachment gives you that choice. And it's not something you do once. It's a daily discipline. Each moment becomes an invitation. Will you react blindly or respond wisely? Letting go isn't about pretending it didn't matter. It's about realizing it no longer controls your present. When you detach, you aren't pushing life away. You're making space to live it more fully, more freely. That's not weakness. That's power. And here's something most people don't realize. Detachment isn't passive. It's active. It requires intense presence. You have to be aware of your own patterns, your triggers, your history. You have to sit with the discomfort instead of running from it. Detachment demands courage because it often means not getting closure, not getting the apology, not having the last word. But instead of clinging to what you can't control, you return to what you can. Your breath, your values, your peace. And from that place, you become emotionally untouchable. People will still try to provoke you. Life will still throw its chaos at your feet. But something in you has changed. You don't flinch. You don't chase. You don't cling. Because the strongest person in the room isn't the one who talks the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need to prove anything. And here's the paradox. When you let go of needing control, you become more powerful than ever. Because no one can use your emotions against you anymore. No one can manipulate you through guilt, fear, or approval seeking. You don't react. You observe. You decide. You stop being the puppet and become the one holding the strings. So the next time you hear the word detachment, don't think of coldness. Think of clarity. Think of peace in motion. Think of water flowing around the rocks. You don't have to be hard to be strong. You just need to stop holding on to everything that doesn't serve your growth. Letting go isn't losing, it's freedom. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you'll never go back to begging for peace in places designed to steal it. The heaviest burdens we carry are the ones we can't see, not the physical weight on our shoulders, but the emotional clutter, the mental leaks, the silent attachments. They drain us, quietly, consistently, until we forget what it feels like to be light. If you feel constantly tired, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, there's a reason. It's not always about doing too much. Sometimes it's about holding on too long. Ask yourself, what are you clinging to right now? A past you can't change, a person who's already left. An ideal version of life that never showed up. Clinging doesn't feel like clenching. It often hides under rationalizations like, I just need closure. I deserve an explanation. They owe me something. But the truth is, the longer you hold on to what's not holding you, the more you bleed energy. That's why the Stoics practiced emotional inventory, a kind of weekly audit of the soul. Just like you check your finances or your health, you must check where your energy is leaking. Ask yourself who or what is occupying your mind without paying rent. Which conversations are you replaying, even though they ended days, weeks, or years ago? Which wounds are you scratching open again and again by thought alone? Because sometimes it's not the event that drains you, it's your attachment to it. An argument left unresolved, a message you never got to send, a relationship you still replay at 2 a.m. These are open tabs in your mental browser. And just like a laptop slows down with too many tabs, your mind slows down when you don't know what to close. Here's something no one tells you. Not everything needs closure. Some things just need distance. Closure is overrated. It's a luxury, not a requirement. You don't need a full explanation to heal. You don't need a grand finale to move forward. You need permission to stop bleeding for something that doesn't feed you anymore. That permission won't come from them. It has to come from you. You must decide, my peace matters more than this narrative I keep trying to fix. So here's a practical tool. Create a weekly emotional inventory. Sit in silence, no distractions, and ask, what made me feel heavy this week? Which interactions drained me? What thought did I keep returning to that never gave me peace? Write it down. Name the weight. Because what you don't name, you can't release. And then choose what stays and what goes. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your inner space to not let chaos live rent-free inside it. This is how you reclaim control, not through aggression, but through gentle, deliberate withdrawal from what no longer serves your growth. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who force outcomes. They're the ones who walk away without needing applause. They don't chase closure. They chase alignment. And anything that costs them peace is too expensive to keep. Let that be your new standard. Don't ask, do I have the right to be angry? Ask, do I want to keep carrying this for one more day? Don't ask, what if they finally realize my worth? Ask, why am I waiting for someone else to confirm what I already know? This is how emotional fatigue turns into emotional freedom. Not overnight, but through small, consistent choices to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Your energy is your life force, and you only get so much of it each day. Don't waste it on echo chambers of the past. Don't pour it into dead conversations. Don't let it leak through the cracks of unfinished stories. Close the tab. Even if you didn't get the final chapter, you are allowed to move on, mid-sentence. And in that decision, you'll feel something strange, a lightness, a quiet confidence, a reclaiming of self. That's not indifference. That's evolution. You're not giving up. You're finally choosing you. There's a quiet kind of power that most people overlook. It doesn't shout. It doesn't push. It doesn't need to win the argument or rush into reaction. It simply pauses. In a world that demands instant replies, rapide décision, and constant presence, the pause is rebellion. Because sometimes the most strategic move is stepping back. The Stoics understood this. They believed that clarity doesn't come from constant action. It comes from space, from distance, from silence, from the choice not to engage just yet. When you take a step back, you don't lose ground. You regain vision. You stop swimming in the emotional current long enough to realize whether the water even deserves your effort. This isn't passivity. It's tactical stillness. And it begins with one habit: the 3-second mental pause. Before you respond to the message, before you speak that emotional truth, before you let anger steer the wheel, pause. 3 seconds. Long enough to shift the energy from impulse to intention. It may sound simple, but those 3 seconds can save you 3 days of regret. They give your higher mind, the calm, grounded part of you, a chance to show up first. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." That's not just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Your amygdala, the brain's fear and reaction center, fires fast. Instantly. It wants to protect, defend, retaliate. But your prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic and perspective, takes longer to come online. And if you speak or act before it arrives, you're not responding, you're reacting. But the pause, those 3 sacred seconds, they create a bridge, a moment for your wiser self to arrive, a moment to ask, is this worth my energy? Will this move me forward? Or am I about to give my power away? The Stoics called this prohairesis, the space of internal choice, the only thing truly within your control. And it's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about reclaiming leadership over your own mind. Because when you don't pause, the world controls you. Every trigger pulls you. Every comment hooks you. Every mood from someone else becomes your emotional weather. But when you pause, you become unhookable. You stop living on autopilot. You stop handing your reactions to people who haven't earned them. And here's the twist. The obstacle in front of you isn't always there to be removed. Sometimes it's there to be observed. The rude comment, the betrayal, the disappointment, they don't always need confrontation. They often just need your stillness. Because what you observe without reacting to loses its power over you. The pause is where you gather data instead of throwing emotion. It's the difference between reacting from pain and responding from principle. And the man who can hold that pause even under pressure, even when insulted, even when misunderstood, is not weak. He's untouchable. In the modern world, where people confuse loudness with strength, the calm man becomes magnetic. He's not rattled. He doesn't explain himself to chaos. He chooses silence, not because he's lost, but because he's in command. This is not natural for most of us. It's a muscle, and like all muscles, it must be trained. Start with small moments. When your phone buzzes with bad news, pause. When someone crosses a boundary, pause. When you feel the heat rise in your chest, pause. Not forever, just long enough to remind yourself that you choose who you become next. That pause is your power, not to escape life, but to engage it on your own terms. Boundaries aren't walls, they're gates, and the difference is power. Because walls block everything, even love. But gates are selective. They open with intention. They close with wisdom. That's what emotional boundaries are. They're not cruelty. They're clarity. Clarity about who has earned access to your energy, your vulnerability, your peace. Too often, we think boundaries must be loud, that we have to declare them in speeches, that we owe people long explanations about what we will or won't tolerate. But the truth is this: your energy speaks long before your mouth does. How you carry yourself, how slowly you respond, how little you react. These are unspoken boundaries, and they are far more powerful than any verbal rule. Imagine your emotional world like a home, your inner peace, the sacred ground inside, your values, the structure that keeps it standing, your attention, the door that leads others in. You wouldn't leave the front door open to anyone passing by, would you? You wouldn't let someone storm in, track mud across the floor, and criticize the furniture, then still invite them to stay for dinner. But that's exactly what we do when we allow people to enter our emotional space without discernment. People who constantly drain you, people who manipulate through guilt, people who treat your kindness like a transaction. You're not cruel for stepping back. You're not heartless for needing distance. You're wise for building a gate that says, I love myself too much to let chaos walk in unfiltered. I choose peace over the need to be liked. And here's something most people forget. Boundaries don't require conflict. They don't need confrontation. Sometimes, the strongest boundary is simply less access. You stop picking up every call. You stop explaining yourself to people who refuse to understand. You stop participating in conversations that always lead to the same dead end. And you do it, not to punish others, but to protect the clarity you've built within. It's spiritual armor. Because the moment you stop letting others override your emotions, you stop being reactive, and you become rooted, firm, still, calm, under pressure. And calm, these days, is dangerous. It signals to others that you are not emotionally available for chaos, that you are not programmable, that your worth is not on the table for negotiation. When you become this grounded, people may call you distant, cold, arrogant. Let them. You do not need to explain your peace. You do not owe your softness to those who handle it with sharpness. Your boundary is not a rejection of others. It's a protection of self. It's saying, I'll meet you, but not at the cost of myself. I can love you and still say no. I can care and still walk away. And when someone pushes your boundary, what they're really revealing is how little they respected your value in the first place. Because the right people, they'll recognize your gate, and they'll knock, not barge in. They'll honor the space you need. They won't ask you to shrink just to make them more comfortable. Boundaries aren't the end of connection, they're the beginning of real connection. Because only when your peace is protected can your love be pure. Only when your space is guarded can your presence be a gift. And only when your energy is sacred can your life stop being a reaction and start becoming a choice. Not every situation deserves a loud exit. Not every ending needs a storm. Sometimes, the most powerful move is to simply walk away without sound. We're taught to believe that silence is weakness. That distance is avoidance. That if you don't slam the door, you haven't made your point. But here's the truth. The strongest exits are often the quietest ones. Because when your peace becomes more important than proving a point, you've already won. There's a difference between ghosting and graceful exits. Ghosting is reactive. It's a flinch. It's emotional immaturity masquerading as control. But graceful distance, that's intentional. That's a power move wrapped in calm. It doesn't seek revenge. It doesn't perform pain. It just exits with dignity. It's when you know someone no longer deserves your closeness, but you don't need to announce it. You let time, silence, and energy speak for you. And energy always speaks louder than words. This is where the concept of energy tapering comes in. You don't have to rip yourself away from a connection like tearing off a bandage. You can taper. You can reduce emotional bandwidth quietly. Less time, fewer responses, more silence between the lines. This isn't passive. It's precise. It's knowing that not every betrayal needs a confrontation. Not every disconnection requires a dialogue. Sometimes, the exit is not for them. It's for you. It's for the preservation of your dignity, your emotional credit, your time. Because the moment you realize you're explaining your worth to someone who refuses to see it, you've already stayed too long. Distance with dignity looks like this. You stop reacting. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing closure that will never come. And in that stillness, you find yourself again. Sometimes, healing begins not with more effort, but with less availability. You don't owe an audience to everyone who used to have access. You don't owe updates to those who never valued your peace. You don't owe closeness to people who only love you when you're convenient. Ask yourself, what does distance with dignity look like for me? Where am I wasting noise, where I could be reclaiming silence? What would happen if I chose to retreat? Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. There is an art to leaving quietly, to no longer engaging in conversations that drain, to walking away without needing to explain the entire path. And here's the most unexpected thing: the people who once took you for granted will notice your silence more than your words. They'll feel the absence of your energy far louder than the presence of your arguments. Why? Because silence is uncomfortable for those who live off reaction. Stillness unnerves those who need chaos to feel relevant. So become still, become slow, become silent, when silence is more strategic than speech. Not every goodbye needs a final conversation. Not every break needs a breakdown. Sometimes, the clearest statement is the one you never say. It's in how you vanish gently from the room, with your self-respect still intact, and in that exit quiet, composed, intentional. You don't just leave them behind, you rise above. You can care and still walk away. You can love someone deeply and still choose peace over proximity. People confuse release with coldness, but real release isn't bitterness. It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's clarity. It's the moment you realize that holding on is no longer a sign of love, but a weight that's slowly drowning your spirit. Sometimes, the hardest thing you'll ever do is walk away from someone you still want to hold. But the Stoics taught us something profound. Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. Epictetus. That shift in mindset changes everything. It moves you from attachment to acceptance, from clinging to clarity. And it's in that space between heartbreak and healing that true emotional strength is built. Here's the truth. Emotional closure doesn't always come from the other person. Sometimes it never will. Sometimes the apology won't come. The explanation won't arrive. The conversation you rehearsed in your head for months will never take place. But that doesn't mean you have to stay stuck. Closure is not something they give you. Closure is something you create. And one of the most powerful tools you can use is a letter you never send. Write it. Pour out the anger, the confusion, the grief. Say everything you wish you could say, but not to receive a response. Not to trigger a reaction. Write to release. Because often, what keeps us trapped isn't the person, it's the unsaid things, the looping thoughts, the conversations we never had but keep playing on repeat. That letter, the one you never send, isn't for them. It's for you. It's your way of saying, I cared. I tried, but I choose to let go. Not because I stopped caring, but because I started healing. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing history. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't matter. It means you no longer need to hold on to pain in order to remember love. You can honor the lesson without keeping the wound open. Sometimes, closure is a breath. Sometimes, it's a silent drive home with no goodbye. Sometimes, it's deleting the message you wrote at 2 a.m. and choosing peace instead of proving your point. And if your heart still aches, that's okay. Healing is not linear. Letting go is not a straight line. But every time you choose release over resentment, you're rewriting your story from survival to strength. Remember, you can love someone and still let them go. You can forgive someone without reopening the door. And the most powerful kind of freedom is when you walk away, not with hatred, but with no regrets. Because in the quiet of that release, you finally remember who you are. And no one, no memory, no person, no story can take that away from you. You don't even realize it. But every scroll, every tap, every notification is pulling on a thread of your nervous system. It's quiet, it's subtle, but it's constant. Social media wasn't designed to nourish your soul. It was designed to keep you hooked, not informed, engaged, not fulfilled, addicted. You log in for 5 minutes, just to check in, and before you know it, you've been scrolling for an hour. You didn't plan it, you didn't want it, but it pulled you in. You came for an update and left with anxiety. You came for entertainment and left with a strange sense of emptiness, because in that hour, you absorbed hundreds of lives, thousands of micro messages, smiling faces, perfect lighting, curated quotes, highlight reels of people who don't know your name but somehow influence how you feel about your own. And here's the cost no one talks about. It drains your clarity. It dulls your intuition. It hijacks your focus. And it silently replaces your inner voice with the noise of the world. You start comparing your healing pace to someone else's timeline. You start questioning your worth based on likes, shares, or silence. It's a modern trap, and it's dressed up as connection. But in truth, comparison has become a virus of the soul, and your nervous system was never meant to carry this much data, this much projection, this much emotional weight. You're not just tired, you're overstimulated. You're not lazy, you're distracted at a level your ancestors never had to fight against. And if you feel disconnected, even though you're always online, you're not alone. Because connection without presence is just digital noise. So here's your reset. Try a no-feed fast. One day, just 24 hours. No scrolling, no stories, no comparison loops. Let your fingers stay still. Let your eyes rest. Let your thoughts return to their original volume, not drowned beneath 1,000 posts. It will feel strange at first, like your brain keeps reaching for a ghost. But hour by hour, you'll notice something profound. Your thoughts begin to breathe again. Your focus sharpens. You remember what you actually feel when you're not constantly absorbing the feelings of others. This is more than digital detox. This is mental cleansing. It's spiritual hygiene. It's reminding yourself, your mind belongs to you. And here's a reframe that changes everything. Your attention is your most sacred currency. You spend it every day. With every scroll, click, and tap, you invest it somewhere. So ask yourself, are you investing it in peace, presence, and purpose? Or spending it on chaos, noise, and distraction? Attention is energy, and what you give energy to grows. If you constantly feed yourself with artificial comparison, don't be surprised if your joy starts to starve. So instead of living in constant input mode, create sacred hours. These are tech-free zones in your day. Non-negotiable blocks of stillness, where your mind is off-grid and your soul can reconnect. Maybe it's the first hour of your morning. Before you check anyone else's world, you return to your own. Maybe it's an afternoon walk. No music. No podcast. No feed. Just silence. Just you. Just now. Or the final hour before bed, where the glow of your screen gets replaced by the glow of your spirit coming home. In these sacred hours, you remember what it feels like to be undistracted, unavailable, and finally, at peace. You're not ignoring the world. You're just choosing not to let it invade you. 24/7. Digital detachment is not rebellion. It's not isolation. It's not falling behind. It's recalibration. You're tuning back into what's real, what's silent, what's actually yours. Because when your mind is constantly open, your spirit gets exhausted. You don't need to delete everything. You don't need to live off-grid. But you do need to reclaim your center. The center where you feel clear again, grounded again, whole again. The truth is, not everything deserves your attention. Not every post deserves your reaction. Not every platform deserves your presence. You're allowed to protect your peace, even from a screen, especially from a screen. And when you finally do, you'll realize peace isn't a luxury. It's a choice. Every moment you're not watching others is a moment you're watching over yourself. And that's the quiet kind of power that no algorithm can ever measure. Letting go is often misunderstood. People think it's about cutting someone out of your life, blocking their number, deleting the pictures, and convincing yourself you're done. But the real work doesn't happen in your phone. It happens in your nervous system, in your thoughts at 1:47 a.m., in the silent rituals you don't even realize you've built around their presence. Because here's the hard truth. You don't just lose a person, you lose the rhythm your mind built around them. You lose the habit of checking your phone for their name, the imaginary conversations you rehearsed before sleep, the storylines you played out in your head, not for closure, but for comfort. That's the real addiction. Not just to them, but to the emotional loops they activated in you. So when you remove the person but keep the pattern, you've changed nothing. You leave behind an emotional vacuum, and nature hates vacuums. So does your mind. If you don't replace what they represented, your system will pull in the nearest substitute, often worse, more confusing, and just as unhealed. Same story, different face, same pain, different voice. That's why the next level of detachment isn't removal, it's replacement. This is the part most people skip. They subtract, but they forget to install. Install what? New rhythms, new rituals, new reinforcement loops that aren't based on chaos, longing, or dependency. This is strategic, emotional architecture. You ask, what was I using them to regulate in me, and what can I build that fulfills that role? Without wounding me in the process. For example, if they were the person you vented to every night, replace that with a nightly voice memo to yourself. Not for anyone else, just so your inner voice becomes louder than theirs. If they gave you emotional adrenaline, replace it with things that activate your system without poisoning it. Cold showers, intense workouts, breath work, not because you're avoiding pain, but because you're alchemizing it. If they made you feel seen, build a habit of seeing yourself clearly. Journal every day. Write not just what happened, but how you interpreted it. Catch the patterns. Name the wounds. Track your evolution like you're studying something sacred, because you are. This isn't just healing, it's engineering your emotional future. Let's be clear. You don't replace a person with another person. You replace the emotional pattern they fulfilled with something sustainable, healthy, and self-generated. This is how you protect yourself from spiraling back, because spiraling doesn't start with missing them. It starts with missing the way you use them to distract yourself from yourself. So ask yourself right now, what specific behaviors do I need to dismantle? What silent rituals were attached to their presence? What kind of person do I become when I stop building my life around people who were never built to stay? Replace the habit, not out of desperation, but out of design. Let walking become your release. Let silence become your sanctuary. Let structure become your closure. Because the truth is, you can't just let go. You have to rebuild what they once occupied. Not to forget them, but to remember yourself. And the most powerful form of remembering is choosing what to do next with your space, your time, and your peace. Let them go. Then build something so intentional. Their absence becomes irrelevant. Sometimes the most haunting ghost in your life isn't a person. It's the version of you that you used to be. Not the loudest, not the strongest, but the most familiar. You still carry their patterns, still follow their rituals, still wear their fears like armor. You've outgrown the pain, but you keep living like you're still inside it. That's the paradox of growth. You evolve, but your habits are loyal to who you were. And it's not because you're weak. It's because the past version of you, even in chaos, felt safe in its own twisted way. They had reasons for how they moved. They built survival systems out of broken things. They learned to smile while bracing for impact. And you honored that version for a long time. But at some point, healing means this. You stop showing loyalty to the self that kept you small. Letting go of people is hard, but letting go of your old self, that's a deeper grief, because that version of you was with you in every heartbreak, every sleepless night, every fight no one else saw. They were there when nobody else was. And that kind of memory breeds a strange attachment. You feel like if you let go of them, you betray the pain that shaped you. But hear this clearly. Honoring your journey doesn't mean staying in its shadow. You can respect your past without reenacting it. So ask yourself honestly, am I acting from old wounds or from current wisdom? Am I making choices to protect who I was or to empower who I'm becoming? Because here's a truth. Most people never say out loud. Growth will often feel like betrayal to your former self. And that's okay. It will feel like a violation of who you thought you'd always be. It will feel like disloyalty to the story you've rehearsed for years. It will feel like abandonment of the roles. You got good at playing the silent one, the fixer, the one who always stays. But it's not betrayal. It's transition. It's release. It's permission to become you, not who trauma trained you to be. You're not obligated to perform the pain you've already healed from. You don't have to carry the identity of someone who never felt seen, because now you see yourself. That version of you, the one that tolerated mistreatment, that doubted their worth, that clung to people who drained them, they deserve a peaceful goodbye. Not shame, not judgment, just release. Say thank you, and then step forward. Let the new version of you breathe. One who doesn't flinch when loved. One who doesn't beg to be chosen. One who doesn't dim themselves to keep others comfortable. You're not changing in a negative way. You're aligning. You're returning to who you were before the world taught you fear. So let the old version of you rest. Not because they were weak, but because you're strong enough now to live without their survival strategies. That's what real healing is. Not pretending the old self never existed, but no longer needing them to protect you anymore. You've built new weapons, forged new peace, written new rules. And that is the quiet power of letting go, not just of them, but of the you who needed them. So we've arrived here, not at a destination, but at a still point, a moment to breathe, to look back, and to feel how far you've come, not in distance, but in detachment. This journey wasn't about forgetting someone. It was about remembering yourself. It wasn't about erasing pain. It was about transmuting it into wisdom. You started with the ache, that familiar hollow, when something or someone you once held onto slips through your hands. But here's the first thing you learned. Letting go isn't passive. It's not doing nothing. It's doing the hardest thing. Choosing not to reach. Choosing not to chase. Choosing to sit with the silence instead of begging for noise. And in that silence, you remembered your own voice. You drew boundaries. You took pauses instead of reacting. You pulled your energy back from the emotional chaos of others. You stopped scrolling and started listening inward. You began to see that letting go is less about who leaves and more about who you're becoming when they do. Because every time you release something misaligned, a toxic pattern, an outdated identity, a person who no longer respects your peace, you send a signal to life itself. I'm ready for something truer. And the universe, God, or nature, whatever language speaks to your soul, always responds to that kind of courage. But now comes the hardest release of all. It's not a person, not a habit, not a social media loop. It's you. The version of you that once needed approval. The version of you that clung to people just to not feel alone. The version of you that accepted less because you feared being too much. Letting go of others is an external act. Letting go of who you used to be, that's where the true transformation begins. And you might grieve her, or him, that past self, because in some strange way, they kept you safe. They helped you survive. But you're not here to survive anymore. You're here to live fully, consciously, with strength rooted not in what you control, but in what you're willing to release. So here's the final prompt, not to answer fast, but to sit with, what's one thing you can release today? Not 10. Not everything. Just one. A thought that keeps looping. A resentment that's weighing your spirit down. A name that doesn't need to echo anymore. A story about yourself that's no longer true. Because even one small release can shift the architecture of your entire emotional world. Letting go creates space. And space is sacred. Because space is where peace enters. Where new love has room to breathe. Where purpose becomes visible again. We often mistake letting go as losing, but more often than not, it's a return. A return to clarity, to stillness, to strength that doesn't yell, doesn't beg, doesn't prove. It just is. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And that's it. That's the whole game. When you realize that your peace isn't given to you by others, but protected by your own choices, you become untouchable. And when you stop chasing what was never yours, you become magnetic to what always was. So breathe now. Not a forced breath, a soft one. The kind that says, I'm not holding that anymore. I'm not forcing that anymore. I'm not afraid of the stillness anymore. You don't need closure from them. You don't need validation. You don't need to replay the moment they walked away. You only need to return to the moment you finally said, enough. Enough noise. Enough war with yourself. Enough running in circles, looking for what you already carry within. And from that space, you'll stop letting people in who threaten your peace. You'll stop habits that drain instead of nourish. You'll stop betraying yourself just to be understood. Because now you understand, letting go is not abandonment. It's realignment. You're not giving up. You're getting clear. You're not leaving people behind. You're walking forward, and the path ahead. It's quieter, more focused, maybe lonelier at first, but deeply, deeply peaceful. And in that peace, you'll hear something you haven't heard in a while, your own intuition, your own calm, your own power, returning home. If this resonated with your journey, share it with someone who's carrying too much. Let them know they don't have to hold it all anymore. And if you're ready to keep building that inner fortress, one brick of stillness at a time, subscribe. Stay with us. We're not done yet. Neither is your transformation.